Okay, when you're tuning your guitar, there are two really good strategies. Okay, I suppose there are three if you're using a guitar tuner. Strategy number one is if you don't have much of an ear for this yet, that's okay. You'll develop that. But if you don't, just get yourself a guitar tuner. They're super cheap all over the place. I got one for about $8. And that's pretty self-explanatory. But if you don't have one of those and you just want to do it by ear, here's the easiest way. Say you have one string that you know is in tune, and you're going to need that for either of these two methods. So if you have a piano or if you're playing with your friends and one of them is in tune, have them play like an A string or a D or something like that and get your string to match theirs. Once you have that one string, you're good to go. So say I have my A string in tune. Sorry, my A string. And I know that sounds real good. And then say my E is kind of out, and my D is kind of off, and I'll make a real mess of my guitar here. Right? So that really doesn't sound right. But I know that one string is in tune, okay? So maybe your guitar's been in its case for a couple years, it's all wonky, who knows, right? Well, what I do know is that my A string, that note is the same as 5th fret on the E string, right? But clearly that doesn't sound the same. So what I do in my head is I play the A, I go, okay, and then I play 5th fret, and I go, okay, is that higher or lower than my A string? I go, okay, well, it's a little lower. So what do I gotta do? I gotta tighten the string and boost that up a little bit. And that's pretty close. If I play them together, you can still hear kind of a wobble in the sound. So you know it's not quite there, so I listen again. Okay, it still sounds like it's a little bit lower than my A string, so I'll tune it up a little bit more. That sounds pretty good. Okay, now the same approach would be used going to your D string. So, I know that D is the same, or it should be the same as 5th fret on the A string. But I listen to it, and I go, that's not quite right. Does it sound a little bit higher or a little bit lower? To my ear, it sounds like it's a little bit higher, which, in other words, it means it's sharp. So, I gotta loosen the string a little bit. Alright, so that's what it should sound like. A little high, bring it down. Try it again. Sounds pretty close now. Yeah, see, now it sounds a little bit low to me. Bring it back up just a touch. Okay, and you've done it. So, one tiny little tip. This is not hugely important. I mean, you don't have to do this, but it will keep your guitar tune in tune for a little bit longer. Is, say you were in a situation like this, where your D is sharp, right? It's a little bit higher than it's supposed to be. What you can do is, yes, you can gradually tune down to where it should be, but your string will stay in tune longer if you've tuned up to a note. It's just because of how the mechanisms in the tuning machines work. So what I like to do is I always tune below where I want to be first. Right? Now I can hear it's a little bit low. Now I'll tune up to the note. See, I've gone a little bit past, so I tune down again, and then back up. And that sounds pretty good. Okay, so now we've got these three strings in tune. Something I like to do as I go is I just play a little chord using the strings I've tuned already to make sure it still sounds right. It's an E minor. That sounds pretty good. Okay, moving on to the next string. Okay, now we've done these three strings already using one technique. I'm going to show you a different technique using harmonics to do the rest of the strings. So now that I know my D string is in tune, I can use that to tune the G string. So doing it the way we would do before is we'd play 5th fret and then compare, right? And we'd hear it's a little bit lower. Another thing you can do is use harmonics. And if you don't know what harmonics are, I'll put a link below to a video I'm going to do on harmonics just so you can kind of figure that out. But this way I find to be the easiest way. If you do a 7th fret harmonic on the G string and then 5th fret harmonic on the D string, those two notes should sound the same. So in other words, the 7th fret on the lower of the two strings And by lower, I mean like physically lower on the guitar, not lower note. But that should be the same as 5th fret harmonic on the string above it. So if I play those together, you can hear how there's a weird sort of wobbly thing, like wah, 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 wah. I realize that was kind of silly, but you know what I mean. Well, that wobble in the world of physics is called beats, and it has to do with frequency and stuff, but basically what you need to know is that the slower those beats are, the more closely aligned those two notes are. Or in other words, the more in tune you are. So, hopefully you can hear that wobble. It's like wah, 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 wah. So, okay, so that may be a little bit hard to hear. Definitely try it out. Practice that if you can. Because once you get the hang of it, again, it takes a bit of practice. But once you get the hang of it, it's definitely, in my opinion, the most accurate and fastest. And I will say, I mean, if you play with a really noisy drummer or you're playing with a band or something and you just can't get everybody to shut up for long enough to tune, if you're playing a bass, like I used to play bass in a rock band, and those beats, that wah, 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 you can actually feel vibrating in the body of the guitar. I used to tune by feel. You have to have it kind of loud to do that, but it's a really, really useful way to tune. Now, moving on to the next string, that kind of falls apart a little bit. Going to the B string, right? Now we have to go back to that first method. The reason why is because this harmonic thing doesn't work anymore, because the B string is 4th fret above your G string, unlike the other strings where it's 5th fret above. So just do it like we did the first way. Play 4th fret this time on the G string, and I can hear that the B string's a little bit high or a little bit sharp, so we're going to tune down, losing the string. Again, I'm going to go past it and then tune back up. Okay, that sounds pretty good. One thing you might have trouble with the B string, I know I do sometimes, you'll notice on your guitar the way that the strings are made, at least on an acoustic guitar, is that for the top 4 strings, they're sort of rough. You can hear that sound. That's because there's like a solid core, and then there's an outer cable that's wrapped around that core. When you get to the B and the E string at the bottom here, that goes away. In terms of tuning, you'll find that the tone of the string's a little bit different, and that can make it a little bit hard to hear if the actual pitch is correct. So again, it just takes some practice, but try not to get frustrated. You're certainly not alone with having trouble tuning the B string. Okay, we know that the B is good now. That sounds pretty good. Again, check, make sure everything still is nice and pretty. There's an E major. Okay, last string. Okay, that sounds a little bit lower than it should be, right? So we're going to bring it up. Okay, it looks like we just dropped a couple frames. You didn't miss anything, I was just tuning. But that sounds pretty good. Okay, so once again, try a chord. Sounds good, sounds good, sounds good. Okay, that's pretty much how you tune.